It feels incredible.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by La Pop. That's LAPOP. And you can check them out on Instagram, Twitter, and their website. And also the Doral location. This is our first stream on IG Live. We're happy for everyone to keep looking at it, watching it, send everyone there on Instagram. We're going to test it out and let us know if it is working. Let us know if you could see us on Instagram, send us some screenshots, put it on Twitter, let us know that you could see it, that you could see our beautiful faces there on IG Live. As always, I'm joined by Kevin. I'm joined by Eli. It's going to be a smaller stream today, talking about the minor moves the Marlins made. We'll get into what's happening around the league, and then we'll finish it off with predictions and answering some of your questions. Kevin, let's start off with a little baby trade that happened to see our little baby of FOF, Roddy Munoz. The blockbuster. This is the trade everyone's been talking about. Everyone's been waiting for. Talk to us. Who is he?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you a lot more about him, so I'll leave this one to Eli. He wrote the article on Roddy. From what I know, he was a highly regarded prospect entering the year for Fangraphs. The number 8 prospect for the Braves. I believe he was called up, just never made his debut, and he's now on the 40-man roster. So Peter Bendix definitely sees something in him that we don't, but I believe he's still fairly young, I want to say. He's 23 years old, so still time to see, what this guy could turn into. Probably a pretty decent reliever.
Right. I think it's fairly easy to see what he brings to the table. I'll cue up some highlights for people to watch. He throws gas, mid-90s fastball, low 90s slider cutter sort of thing, and then a high 80s changeup. The changeup is the weakest pitch of his mix so far, but the fastball alone can go a long way, especially if he has decent control of it. As is the case with most guys that are on the waiver wire, that the control is somewhat suspect. And he actually finished last year as a starter in the Nats organization, with their AAA affiliate. It was just one of those tweener pseudo starters where he wasn't actually going deep into games, never more than 5 innings, and usually not more than 4 innings at the end of the year. But still, there's still a twinge of hope that perhaps he could be one of those depth starter options. Realistically, you're looking at a reliever, and especially one that's been this past year pretty good against right-handed batters. When he has the platoon advantage, he does overpower those guys. It's just more of a question of what exactly he's going to be able to do against lefties to get them out, especially when that changeup is still very much a work in progress. At the same time, if you're the Marlins, it's never a bad idea to go after players that need changeup development, because there's this great now track record of the Marlins teaching those guys a changeup, or at least improving it and making it a lot more consistent than it would be otherwise. And that's really encouraging, in my opinion. So to me, this was a very marginal move, all things considered. People are still very anxious about them to address the big deficiencies on this team, to figure out a better shortstop solution, perhaps to squeeze in a better catcher than they have right now, and just in general to bring in a bigger run producer to fill the void that they had even last year. They have now, especially without Soler. There are bigger things to address, and this doesn't move the needle one way or another. But I just felt it was better than some of the relievers they had on their roster to begin with, and the corresponding move was the DFA Ryan Jensen. The hope is that Jensen just clears waivers and you don't really lose him. That is the bet that Bendix is making. They claimed Jensen a few weeks ago when he was available on waivers, and now they're hoping that the timing is right. Rosters are a little bit more full, that they sneak him through waivers, they outright him to the minors, and they invite him to spring just as a non-roster guy, and that they don't actually sacrifice anything to take a flyer on Munoz in here. So I see the vision here. When during the Kim Eng era, I had a really bad track record of guessing who would be DFA'd in certain situations and kind of following along with what she was doing. But with this one, this actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Just with this new player, do you guys see him at all making it to the majors at all? Or do you think he'd just be another body maybe for AAA, and maybe he'll come up that we've seen before in the past? Someone like Johan Quesala or a whole bunch of other players that just come up to the majors and are just there to fill a roster spot and not really get any playing time.
Unlikely we see him at the big league level to at least begin the year. I mean, you always lose pitching at some point. We'll see him at some point this season, especially since he's a 40-man guy. He'll probably start at AAA. He was assigned to AA. That doesn't mean anything per the transactions log, but yeah, most likely AAA guy, just depth. I mean, hey, if he does perform well, and wouldn't hurt to see him in the bullpen. But aside from that, he's going to be a guy that gives you length. I guess you could say a Brian Hoeing guy with a lot more swing and miss. But yeah, don't expect him to get any 26-man roster unless he has a very good spring.
Yeah, I agree on that. Or we would expect him to report to AAA to start the year, and it's just a question of when the opening comes up soon enough and how much improvement he's shown over last year. We should kind of give his numbers. He had a mid-5s ERA in the minors last year. It wasn't exactly dominating down there. I believe some of that was also during a minor league rehab assignment in rookie ball. So if you actually look at his numbers at AA and AAA, it's even less flattering. So when he's had results that are just not that good in the minors, it doesn't make him like a high priority coming into camp. Just depends, how consistent he is with his fastball. And if he's able to get ahead in counts more consistently, then the upside is decent for him to be a middle reliever, if not even a little bit better than that at his peak. I should note that Fangraphs was pretty high on him entering the year. This guy was the number 8 prospect in the Braves organization less than a year ago, according to Fangraphs. Pipeline had him at number 21. So yeah, that's a good idea about him being somebody that has fairly good upside for a reliever and still being relatively young. As Kevin said, he was 23 this past year. He just turned 24, and he has minor league options left. We should point that out, that they can send him down and still have him to use later on as the year goes on. So yeah, I like this. Even though it might not make any difference whatsoever in 2024, at least it's something that we can cover on here for people.
Yeah, he has 2 minor league options left.
Yeah, and to go from one minor leaguer to another minor league signing, Kevin, since you're our minor league guy here, Alex Carver's not here. Talk to us about Mr. Diego Infante. No relation to Omar Infante.
No relation to Omar Infante, correct. This is just another depth signing. I'm surprised Miami's making so many outfield signings, I guess you could say. This is, guy who's been pretty good in the minor leagues throughout his career. He's been with Tampa, so not surprising. He's now a Marlin. He struggled this season for the most part, but he's a guy who's going to give you 10 home run seasons here and there. Yeah, nothing real crazy. Plays all 3 outfield spots. If you need a guy to come up to the major league level, he's your guy. So, yeah, nothing too crazy. Probably expect him to get an invite to major league camp and strikes out at a very high rate. That's one thing, too. He has very high strikeout percentages. Just looking at 2022, which is the last full season for him. Actually, I lied. He played only 42 games, but his last full season close enough was 2021, where he had a 26% strikeout rate. So it's not bad, but it's not very good either. But there's times where he has been very close to that 40% rate. But aside from that, he's an all right guy, all right player. I mean, puts the ball in play. But yeah, he had a down year in 2023. Also just moving levels up and down. But he should be another AAA guy. He should be your Brian Miller.
A reminder. We're at in the offseason talking about comparing to Brian Miller.
I'm a little higher on this guy too than Kevin is. Maybe it's because I've nothing else to be excited about, but digging deep on this guy, interested in what he's going to become. He has a Rays connection. For people that didn't know that, he has spent his entire pro career with the Rays until now, until earning minor league free agency. He made it up to AAA last year, but he's mainly at AA. What was interesting, I watched the highlights of all his home runs, and almost every single one of them either went to center field or went the other way to right field. He only pulled one home run all year. And so it tells you, one, that he has the power to use all fields, but also tells you that there might be more power in the tank if he just pulled the ball a little bit more often than he currently does. That's what I'm kind of intrigued to watch moving forward, that if he gets his timing right, maybe there are more long fly balls that get over the wall to left field that might not get out otherwise. The overall stats were fine. He was 111 WRC plus in AA last year, and then that was weighed down when he got bumped up to AAA and struggled. He had 3 home runs against Pensacola alone last year. That's what stood out. I think he only played
friendly ballpark too.
He only played about 2 series against them, and yet he took Will Stewart deep. He took Dax Fulton. He had a homer against Dax Fulton. Those guys both lefties, so he had a good look at them hitting as a right-handed batter. I'm kind of interested in him also on the younger side, 24 years old or thereabouts, where it's not crazy to think that there could be some sort of physical move forward with him that leads to even more game power than what he currently has. Hasn't played a ton of center field recently. I think he's been mainly a corner outfielder as he's reached this point of his career. So that is kind of a limiting factor. Big question just about if there's even more power in games than what he's currently showing, because the ability to go out so frequently to center and to right field, that's pretty exciting in there. The strikeout rate, not quite as bad as, for example, Gerard Encarnacion, who was a Marlins guy in a similar situation where he had all field power. He had some strikeout issues. The Marlins let him leave via minor league free agency last month. And this guy is not as much power as Gerard had, but you hope that he has advantages as an overall player that just make him a more useful depth signing when they need him over the course of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's no Marty Costas type guy, definitely on the younger side, which helps out a lot. And, the fact that Miami was able to snag him, it's a, nice little move. See if he kind of finds success at AAA. Didn't see too much action there last year, just 24 games, not even 100 plate appearances. And he struggled. I mean, 36% strikeout rate, 11 WRC plus, which is horrible. So
11, Kevin?
Yeah.
11?
Yeah, but that's only in 24 games, very small sample size. But yeah, the oppo field percentage is very good, way over the league average. So yeah, nice to nice little signing. I know we're at this point in the offseason. You kind of hope Miami at some point makes a major league roster move, but I mean, not too shabby.
Happy holidays to you, LMF, as well. A reminder that this is the first time that we got the Twitter comments linked up again. So they're scrolling through. We could post them up as you put them in. We had something from a Japanese Marlins fan as well that follows us over there. Thank you for waking up with us. It is already the morning of December 21st over there. So we appreciate you tuning in the daylight hours to enjoy what we're doing, talking all things Marlins on here. And speaking of Twitter, for the people that really live over there, this is referring to a Craig Mish reply to somebody recently saying, closing the door on Jorge Soler coming back. I think we should touch on that. The report from Francis Romero a few days ago that the Marlins and Yankees were still had interest in Soler, but the Mariners were being, the most aggressive in that one. I think, Daniel, you gave it a 3% chance of him re-signing when we were talking about it in the chat a few days ago.
3% of him staying, 97% he's gone. I think he's more than going to be going. I don't know if I could tell, but this Marlins regime with Peter Bendix, they seem pretty hesitant on spending major league money, spending a lot of money on players that we've seen now. We've seen the Royals add $50 million in new contracts and multiple players. I don't see the Marlins doing that, especially if it's $50 million for just one player. I think Jorge Soler is going to get a bigger deal with Seattle and it's maybe New York. If he goes to New York, man, I think Kevin mentioned he could hit 50 home runs over there, and that might be putting a little more, but he could definitely in the AL East get some damage there. But I don't see him coming back to the Marlins. I think the Marlins they would like to get him back, but for the price tag and the teams they're competing with, especially the Yankees and the Mariners that we've seen, are more likely to spend more money than what the Marlins are able to do. But I think he's more than gone. I think it's going to be between Seattle and New York.
You could also make the case that, he's going to look for the most attractive contract, but
Mm-hmm.
you also have to keep in mind, I mean, he's here at home in Miami. He's living at his house. He's sleeping in his bed. He's with his son. You have to look at it in different ways. If he's going for the big contract, you 100% go to New York or Seattle, but you have to think about it. I mean, how willing is he to go over there and spend a couple years without his family for, I mean, you have to think, the non-baseball side about it. And then he has the chance to come back to Miami, even if it's on some sort of hometown discount. He still gets one last, I guess, contract to return to Miami. And evidently, I mean, the fact that the Marlins are even amongst the names considered in there with Seattle and New York, both teams that I believe the Yankees are still yet to spend money in free agency. I know they traded for Juan Soto, but they're yet to do that. So, and I'm also surprised the Yankees are up there because I know Stanton's been injured for the majority of this, these past couple of years, but you have Stanton, you have Verdugo, you brought in Soto and Judge. I mean, where do you slip in someone like Jorge Soler? Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Soler's back. I would put the percentage a little higher. Maybe he does decide to come back on some sort of hometown discount, but I doubt that's the case. I do think somewhere like Seattle or Arizona would be the ideal landing spots for someone like Soler. I mean, you would be the primary DH every single day. You don't have to play the outfield. So I think that's one thing you would be looking for. And if you're Miami, I mean, he would also be able to do that there to a certain degree. But definitely Skip wanted him to play some sort of outfield, at some point in the year.
Yeah, it's a shame that it waited until after he's a free agent to make this gif of him where he says, "Let's go." I hadn't noticed it during the year, but I was watching a replay and found it in there. I'm really just anxious to see what the contract number he gets is, because I was out there and I was pretty adamant about the fact that I thought they should have extended a qualifying offer to him. It would have been $20.3 million for 1 year. My expectation is that he would definitely have turned it down, that there would be very strong 2-year offers, if not some 3-year offers out there for him. That would have been $40 to $50 million, somewhere between those numbers. And he's been on the market a while. Francis Romero was reporting almost as soon as he hit free agency that there were a bunch of teams interested in him. The number was either 6 or 7 different teams early in the process. So you thought maybe he'd be a guy that came off the board early, and that's not the case. He's still out there. And at this stage, based on that last update, he only mentioned those 3 teams, with the Mariners being out in front. And the Mariners being a team that this offseason, they've been cutting a lot of money. They've made a couple salary dump trades with the Braves and also with the Diamondbacks, getting rid of Eugenio Suarez as well. So you wonder how much money they actually have. If they're the front runners or the most aggressive team for them, you wonder if their offer is really that much bigger than what the Marlins would be. I'd be very surprised, though, if he came back, because of those other, as much as they do need a big bat, they really need a bat that can do something other than be a DH. Soler, he did play some outfield last year. He just didn't play it very well when he was out there. There are concerns that when he does play it, it's heightens the injury risk with him. As much as they do need a bat, it's definitely preferable to be somebody that's a decent defender at whatever position they need to be used at. So yeah, I would continue to be very surprised, but then again, I'm a little surprised that he's still unsigned at the moment.
Yeah. And mentioning Soler, and Kevin mentioned Arizona. I believe that both teams might be competing in the DH spot. Someone like JD Martinez that could potentially go to Arizona, compete either with Soler. Do you think the Marlins could be also potentially see JD Martinez as a fit, maybe if they don't get Soler? Or do you believe maybe they'd rather have JD over Soler? Or how do you go for that, competing for a guy that's going to primarily play DH for the whole year?
I mean, I think Eli said it. It's more like, I'm curious what someone like that would get. We saw with JD, I believe he was coming off a down season with Boston, if I recall. And he got 1 for 12, I think it was. And he's probably going to get, obviously, I think, more years. And, not similar AAV, but somewhere around there. He's getting old. I think that we all know that he's getting up there in age. And the same goes with Soler. So that's all I could really say. And I think Eli mentioned it. I mean, you kind of wish you would go for someone that won't be a primary DH, in the sense that he wouldn't mainly DH, but you could also have him, at left, at right, spots where Miami at some points does need someone like that. And especially in left, where DLC is not a very good defensive outfielder. So, and that's where someone like Teoscar Hernandez makes a lot of sense. So that's the name I'm thinking really off the top of my head with Teo. I can't think of anyone else right now that I could just name off the top of my head, but JD would be a great fit. He's a Miami guy. He's been in every single situation you could think of, World Series, playoffs. He's been in it all. So that would be a great guy. And obviously, with his age and the experience, he would be a great locker room guy as well, clubhouse guy, if you want to say. That's someone that I think Miami would love to have. And I believe they've shown interest in him in the past, just he decided to go to LA. But I think it's out of Miami's price range to a certain degree. I would be very interested to see where he does end up going.
Yeah. Tommy, I like that one. That's a good.
I would say to answer, but this was Johnny's original question about Soler replacement. The thinking is you don't want to replace Soler, a player to be exactly like him, but in terms of one that, at least in the power department, would be a fill. And the guy that I had circled entering the offseason was Tyler O'Neill. And based on when he was available and actively being shopped, the price that the Red Sox got him for, I thought that was a really great value. So I thought that was a pretty big missed. To me, that was a great opportunity for the Marlins to get somebody like him. If not him, if we're just into like who's still available, then I think Tommy Pham really does stick out, not just for the production, but also the intangible stuff. As frustrating as it was with Yuli Gurriel and even with Soler himself being kind of limited to DH, and they brought championship pedigree, and those guys were useful in the clubhouse for that reason. And the Marlins hemorrhaged a lot of that championship DNA or that postseason experience in free agency. Even if the players that weren't good, like David Robertson electing free agency and going away. Even Joey Wendell, somebody that played in a World Series a few years prior, to go along with Soler and Gurriel. So Pham is somebody that just this past year played in a World Series. But also, if you just look at his batted ball characteristics, are really strong even at this stage of his career. Not as much over the fence power, but a lot of line drives, a lot of singles and doubles from him. And he could still fake it in center field when you absolutely need him to. He played some center field last year with the Mets. You're kind of bringing him in as a DH and a corner outfielder, but it's nice in your back pocket to feel like you could even use him in center if Jazz is unavailable for whatever reason. So Pham, in terms of somebody that's affordable, I think Pham would get a 2-year deal, but probably at a fraction of the salary that Soler is getting. I don't think it goes above $10 million a year for Pham at this stage, just because it's not a true everyday player, but he does mash left-handed pitching, kind of like Soler did, and he adds a little bit more defensive value in there. So Tommy Pham, it's not a perfect fit, but in terms of one that I think just clearly makes a team better at this stage, and that is actually affordable. That also has a little bit of Peter Bendick's history, because Pham was with the Rays, if you remember correctly. The Cardinals traded him to the Rays, and he was there for, was it parts of 2 seasons? It wasn't very long, but he was good for them when he was there. So Pham, in terms of like the realistic possibilities, he's pretty high up on my preference list.
I think Jock Peterson would also be an ideal one. Gives you 15, 20-ish home runs, doesn't strike out very much, high walk rate. This is an ideal guy. Had 2 very good seasons with San Francisco, 146 WRC plus last season in 2022, and then this past season, 2023, 111 WRC plus. So definitely makes a lot of sense on that end. He plays left field primarily, so you could finally move, DLC as that 4th outfielder. And yeah, I wouldn't hate someone like Jock Peterson whatsoever. I mentioned Joey Gallo in the Fish Unfiltered episode, which you guys could go watch. Shameless plug there. But yeah, he plays first base as well. And Miami right now needs a first baseman. So yeah, Mitch Garver, I wish, but definitely I think we've seen that will be out of Miami's price range. And they're not looking for that type of catcher. They're looking for someone who pitchers like to throw to. And that's why there is guys like Christian Bethancourt who are on the Marlins. So yeah.
So with that, Kevin, so it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. We're going to have our break now and go into Flipped Fish. So when we get to Flipped Fish after the break, keep those questions coming. We want to hear all your questions so we can have a little bit towards the end of the pod. And what are the coincidence? We have a Japanese fan in the chat, and our Flipped Fish is Marlins player and NPB. Oh, you're muted, Eli.
In the absence of sexy Marlins transactions, the biggest story presiding over the game right now seems to be the bidding for Yoshinobu Yamamoto and the contract that's going to. I felt it was a good opportunity to pick a former Marlins player who was also a former NPB player in Nippon Professional Baseball in Japan right here. So these are his major league career stats. A former Marlin who also went over to Japan. He went to Japan after he played for the Marlins.
Oh, this is
infielder, primarily a shortstop, born from Cuba, and he debuted in 2012. He's still, I believe, an active baseball player, but he's not active in the majors, and I don't think he is active with an NPB team either. But he actually, I guess a big hint is that he was even playing winter ball this winter as well. So still an active guy, former Marlin. When we come back from the break, we'll see if any of you guys identified correctly who this is for Flip Fish. Stick with us.
Let's see if anyone got it.
Someone got it.
Here it is. Johnny.
Yep.
Yeah, it is Hideni Echeverria, Isaac's favorite shortstop in
Dude,
Marlins.
it's crazy. 5.1 WAR. His defense really helped him out a lot throughout his career.
Ooh.
Yeah. So there he is with the Chiba Lotte Marines. It's when you take a quick glance at it, their logo on their hat almost looks like the current Marlins logo.
He looks younger on the right.
He has aged gracefully, yes.
Isn't this the team that De Jesus signed with?
No, Emmanuel De Jesus went with the KBO team.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they might have a similar name. I have it written somewhere, but yeah, not this team. So yes, it was Etch, and even Kevin got it as well. Pretty impressive.
Oh, come on.
Some members on FOF, they would not mind that.
I think there was a rumor last year that Etch
possibly,
was like in negotiation. Well, not negotiation, but that the Marlins were potentially interested in like a minor league deal with him. That was, I believe, just last year. Maybe 2 years ago, but as of this offseason, nothing much. And he was playing in the Puerto Rican Winter League this year. I don't think did anything special over there, but still at this stage, he's entering his age 35 season. Always been really good defensively.
Hey, if he still wants to come back, Miami needs a shortstop.
Right. So this past summer, like he split time between the Long Island Ducks in the Atlantic League and also with the Royals AAA affiliate.
Dang.
Yeah, he got signed by the Royals. I remember that. Hey, if he ever wants to come back, the Jumbo Shrimp need a shortstop.
Well, what do you guys want to talk about?
Jesus Luzardo. We have to talk about Jesus Luzardo trade rumors. It looked like the Marlins were in some sort of negotiations with the Kansas City Royals to acquire first baseman and Italian. What would have been the new Italian stallion, Vinny Pasquantino. So, just want to get your thoughts, boys.
It's true. They do have a vacancy for an Italian stallion
at
this moment, with Castano also going to the KBO, leaving there as a free agent. I had an article about this with my thoughts on that particular one. Just the general idea of moving him. As we already mentioned this earlier in the show, that they just have some pressing needs at the up the middle positions at shortstop, like long term, not only for 2024, but even moving forward at both shortstop and at catcher, and some questions in center field in terms of whether Jazz is going to stick there. Those players are really expensive to acquire no matter what you do. If they do move Luzardo, then it really has to go a long way to addressing one of those spots. Pasquantino, he is a really promising first baseman / DH, very popular personality-wise as well, but that's a position at first base and DH where it's easier to slap that together pretty cheaply and efficiently, whereas it's just so hard to find long-term solutions at those up-the-middle positions. With Luzardo, he is in that rare position, that combination of recent production and his youth and how cheap he is right now and for the next couple of years, that he just has enough value to bring you back one of those solutions at those up-the-middle positions. It's my preference that they extend him, that they keep him around, and that I feel he is as trustworthy as any of their other pitchers moving forward. But I also recognize that it's so expensive to get starting pitching, and that when you look at him and you look at somebody like Tyler Glasnow that just received an $100-something million extension, there's a lot of similarities there. It could be in a situation that his year was so good this past season that he might be out of the comfort zone for this team to extend him. You're not going to get him on a Sandy-like extension. You're talking about probably twice as much guaranteed money that they gave Sandy for those years. They got a steal with him, and I think they may have they're in a situation where it really puts that philosophy to the test. Are they willing to make a big investment in another starting pitcher long term? And our best guess is that they probably aren't. And if that's the case, then you have to at least listen for trade opportunities in order to address these other needs. If you feel like his value is as high as it's going to be, then yeah, you need to be open to something like it's going to be really unpopular, but there's just this long history of the Rays in particular making these types of deals when they have pitchers that are like Luzardo. They cash in at the right time. Their history of the returns they get in those trades is pretty good as well. They've been very successful at making those tough decisions less painful in the long term because they've taken the right guys in return. Just in my opinion, Pasquantino is not that guy that you'd be looking for. It would have to be a unique situation, but it'd have to really help them at one of those other positions that they should be focused on more so than first base.
It seems like the reports kind of mentioned they would want some multiple top 100 prospects in return, and that makes a lot of sense. But I think I wouldn't say a good example because definitely different seasons how they ended. But look at Blake Snell after 2020. They traded him with, I believe, as many years left, 3 years of control left. Mm-hmm. And that was not a very good return at the end. Only one that was very noticeable was Francisco Mejia, who ended up kind of playing for a little bit with the Rays, struggled, and kind of bounced around after that, or is now a free agent. And then the other one, I believe, was prospect Blake Hunt, who they did not protect in the Rule 5, and they ended up trading him to Seattle. So that's one example to look at there, the Blake Snell situation. But I know they also acquired a couple other guys. But aside from that, I mean, that's kind of what you look at, and you hope that's not what happens. But that was Peter Bendix. He was there with the Rays back then, and they made that trade. But yeah, Luzardo, you got to find as much as you can to get for this type of a pitcher. And I'm with Eli. You should extend this guy. You should try to do this as soon as you possibly can. But, that's not the case. And Eli's showing us right now how many guys got traded. Only 2 of them were not traded. One of them went through waivers, and the other one was a free agent. That was Alex Cobb and Yoni Chirinos. Every single other guy was dealt. And it shows you kind of the same situation. 2 to 3 years left of control. This is the ideal guy that someone would want to trade away.
Yeah, the exception was Glasnow, just because he was coming off Tommy John surgeries. They had to wait for him to build up his value after TJ. That's why he had only 1 year left. With all the other guys, they acted earlier and they got even more in return than. But this Glasnow one, it kind of depends. There's been an alternate. In my opinion, I think they did pretty well with what they got with Glasnow. Just the reality that they weren't going to extend him moving forward. I've seen some mixed opinions on that because Glasnow is a very polarizing player just because he's never healthy, but when he's healthy, he's really great. And Luzardo, he balances that a little more, where he's pretty good, but he's not quite as not quite as much upside as somebody like Glasnow had. So this is from Fangraphs. It was an article about Ryan Pepio already preparing for when the Rays are going to trade him, the guy they just acquired for Glasnow, already like
Just 3 years
projecting.
left, I believe.
Yeah, when it is that they're going to flip him for a pretty big return. This is the history that Bendix has come from, and you just wonder how much of an influence that has on what he's going to do now that he's leading his own front office.
Yeah, I mean, you got to try to get as much as you can for someone like Luzardo, especially if you're trading him, because ideally this is your opening day starter in 2024, and this is your ace in 2024. So I hope they don't trade him. I hope they try to keep him for as long as they can, because at the end of the day, this is a Miami native. You know, he wants to be here, but I don't know, man. It's so weird because with Sandy, you set the organization to a spot where you got to give something similar to what Sandy got, and that's just not what Luzardo's worth. And that was the case with Pablo. At the end of the day, you got someone like Arias, but look what Pablo got. I believe he got over 100 mil or very close to that.
40,
So,
a little less.
Was it 80?
It was 73 around there over 4 years.
So yeah, I mean, more than Sandy.
Right.
So yeah.
And I agree with Mega totally that what the Rays do, even though it works, it is sad, and it's not shocking that their fan base itself has had a difficult existence, and that they haven't grown quite as much as you would expect for a team that wins as much as they do.
It works.
Constantly churn these players and lose recognizable faces. It's a less sexy way to build a baseball team, to only rent stars for a very limited amount of time and move them, especially on the pitching side, moving almost every single one of them before they even finish their normal team control years.
Is there even, who's the last Rays pitcher to get an extension? I mean,
there've been a few.
Moore get an extension with them ever?
More recently, Matt Moore was one.
Eflin,
yeah,
but that was just
some of the ones that they have traded on that list. They were ones that did have some extensions. Blake Snell had an extension that had added a couple of years beyond what they normally had control of. Chris Archer is the more famous one. That was a total heist. They paid him like a peasant for a bunch of years moving forward, and that's how they were able to get a big haul for him. Even though as soon as they traded him, he kind of fell off a cliff. The reason why they got so much in return is because there were these several club options at the end of it at really cheap prices that he didn't even totally live up to in that respect. So they've given out some extensions, but they never follow through on them. And LMF brings it up, even though the Marlins have extended Sandy already, there's no guarantee that they keep him through the whole course of that, because like all these, it's a backloaded extension. And Tyler Glasnow was on an extension too. Like he was entering his year where his salary finally spiked up to $25 million. People were wondering, are the Rays, now that they have a new ballpark coming and so much success and baseball is doing well, they're finally going to pay a pitcher $25 million a year? No, they're not.
What's Eflin making?
Eflin, it's lower than that. I think he got a 3-year, $40 million deal
He's
at the
making
time.
13 a year. He's making 13 a year.
Right.
3 for 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal guy to extend next, I guess, would be Yuri. Pre-arb extension. They did it with the man who shall not be named, the shortstop who shall not be named from the Rays. But yeah, I'm very interested to see what Miami does. I mean, this guy looks like he's willing to trade just about anyone on this roster that is not named Yuri Perez. So yeah, should be interesting to see what he does in the next couple of weeks, because I believe arbitration's coming up fairly soon.
Ooh,
You want to look at some trades? I was just
playing around here.
Baseball trade values. These are not mine. I don't like spending too much time there, but there's a bunch of, because Luzardo is in the rumors, there are people pitching all these sorts of trades. This one going 4 for 1 going to the Giants. Everybody has disliked it on both sides. where the Marlins get, it's headlined by Luis Matos, who's a very good prospect for the Giants, as well as Lamont Wade. He's like a platoon guy. Blake Sable is a third string catcher sort of type, maybe a backup catcher, number 2 guy. I'm not super familiar with Keaton Wynn. And then there's a 3-team trade: Marlins, Twins, and Padres, involving Edward, involving Kepler going to the Padres. The Marlins getting Jorge Polanco, but mainly getting Jackson Merrill. I've seen this suggested Our buddy Savento is pretty fixated on the possibility of Jackson Merrill coming to the Marlins. He is one of the better shortstop prospects in baseball at this stage with the Padres, but it's a hard time envisioning them trading him, considering how top heavy their farm system is right now. These are a couple examples. I have a lot more to go to, but
we're good.
Let's cook.
Oh God! I mean,
let me grab one more.
Edwards and Luzardo.
Keen Win is a 25-year-old right-handed pitcher from the Giants.
There's a 4-for-1 with the Yankees. Where
Who are these guys? Like,
pretty good.
I know who Oswald Peraza is and Everson Ferreira, but like, who are the other two guys?
Hampton.
And this one with the Twins is
Brooks Lee. Ooh,
yeah.
I was talking about him.
I've seen that mentioned in a couple places, and that sticks out to me as one
pretty
that's would be it stings because they could have just drafted Brooks Lee in 2022, as we vividly remember. So the idea of him being the centerpiece of a Luzardo trade stings. At the same time, he is somebody that has that everyday shortstop potential, and he's already big league ready pretty much, yet blocked from that opportunity in Minnesota as well. The Twins one makes those possibilities are easier for me to stomach. Our buddy Peter Pratt on Locked On Marlins, he has proposed a Luzardo for Royce Lewis straight up deal, one that I don't think the Twins would be all that interested in. And from the Marlins side, I actually think Luzardo might have a little more value than Lewis does anyway. I don't know if that's a great fit, but it is kind of creative. Lots of possibilities out there.
Yeah. And what do you guys think about, not think, but what do you guys think is the most ideal return from Luzardo? You mentioned the Royals and Vinny and maybe a top 100. Do you guys see something else from the Royals that you would want besides Vinny or any other just trade that you guys can think of that would be at least somewhat ideal for Luzardo?
No. I can't think of anything right now. I'll have to sit down and do a deeper dive.
I don't find the Royals to be a great fit. I mentioned in the article that if it was Vinny P and Michael Garcia, who had been a shortstop for a lot of his minor league career, was moved over to third base in the big leagues because of Bobby Witt Jr. If it's those two for Luzardo, like I could live with that. At the same time, it's kind of a forced issue. I don't like their catching situation. I don't see a way that Salvador Perez would be involved. And
Blake Mitchell?
No, he's too far away. Blake Mitchell and MJ Melendez isn't even a catcher anymore. I'm pretty low on MJ Melendez despite the interesting potential that he has right now. Yeah, to me, the Orioles are a potential fit. The Twins, those two really stick out a lot. We'll see what the Dodgers do. The Dodgers potentially as well. They have great prospect options to choose from. They seem to need one other starter even after getting Glass now. But I think the market for Luzardo trading becomes clearer after we see where Yamamoto goes, because whatever team doesn't land him, then Luzardo is pretty high on the list of next potentially available pitchers behind there. So Yamamoto, it's 2 more weeks until his posting window closes, and hopefully there's a deal even before that so that we get a clear idea of the trade market.
All right. And I think with that, we're to go ahead for a little prediction time, talking a little bit about Jesus Luzardo. So Eli, do we have a new prediction time video?
Oh no, I think it doesn't.
We have a new one, and it's starring each of us. It's kind of an interim one. I might do a more developed one pretty soon. This is what we're working with right now.
This is prediction time.
Y'all ready? We may need a new video.
So for those of you new for prediction time, usually we do this during this season, but a little bit the off season, we're gonna have some different questions to ask for prediction time. And for this one, we just talked about Luzardo, so it should be yes or no, simple. Does Luzardo get traded in the off season? Eli, do we have that music?
Hold on. Get rid of that and get this music up right there.
All right. First, leading off as always, it's Mr. Kevin.
I'm gonna say Jesus Luzardo will get traded this offseason. I hope that's not the case, but inactivity in the free agent market kind of gives you a sense that maybe their big move is going to come via trade, and that's what it's looking like overall. And this guy's not afraid to trade anyone. He's done it before in Tampa, and he will do it here in Miami. And Jesus Luzardo's value is extremely high right now, over 200 strikeouts, career high in innings pitched. He pitched well in the playoffs. Jesus Luzardo, unfortunately, will not be a Miami Marlin in 2024.
All right, I'm going to go the complete opposite of Kevin. I think Luzardo is a Miami Marlin for the 2024 season. Maybe he gets traded the year after that, but for this season, I think he stays with Miami. Just because the pitching depth the Marlins have in that rotation, if you take out Luzardo and already losing Sandy and not knowing what you're going to have with Trevor, I think it's going to be in a pretty bad position if they do trade Luzardo. Eli.
I believe Luzardo will be a Marlin come opening day again. Peter Bendix keeps saying that he is still learning. Is that what he keeps saying? I'm still learning about this team, learning what I have, doing my research on that stuff. I'm going to use that as the default until he proves otherwise. And what's been a very quiet first offseason for him, like naturally listening on this type of player for the reasons we laid out, it makes a lot of sense. I get it. I do believe he's at the very peak of his trade value if you were going to trade him. And I'm pessimistic about them being able to extend him. I think he does eventually get traded, at least for this offseason. I think Luzardo stays in Miami, and they give him a chance to lead this rotation in 2024.
All right, you heard it here first from us on a prediction time for Jesus Luzardo, and that's going to do it for us for this edition of FOF Live. For myself, Daniel, for Kevin, for Eli, we are presented by LaPop, LAPOP, and always go fish.